Hello to all the Story Listener podcast fans. If you're ready for a journey full of mystery, magic, and adventure, you're exactly where you need to be. Tonight, we're going back, way back, to a time when no one knew that a tiny baby was about to change the world. A dark, silent night filled with questions, a night that brought an end, and a brand new beginning. In this episode, we'll step into a magical world where strange and unbelievable things aren't so far-fetched. Many might remember this night as the fall of the darkest wizard in history, but we're going to see it from a different angle. What exactly happened that changed everything? Why did the name of a child send shivers down the spines of those who feared nothing? And why do some nights feel darker and more frightening than others? This episode is the beginning of a story many of us grew up with. But this time, we'll dive into it in a new way, more deeply, more richly, and in a more story-driven style. So sit back, take a deep breath, close your eyes, and let the words carry you away. Welcome to the world of magic. It was dark outside, and sometimes, darkness feels like a blessing. It hides our embarrassment, our shame. The last time I blushed from embarrassment was when Madame Pomfrey complimented my earmuffs. Professor McGonagall glanced at Dumbledore and said seriously, "All flights are nothing, you haven't heard the rumors? You know how people talk. They're saying things, like why he disappeared, or who it was that stood up to him and defeated him." It seemed they were getting close to the matter that had been weighing on Professor McGonagall's mind, so close that she didn't want to continue the conversation. This was the very thing that had kept her sitting on that cold, hard wall all day. The sharpness in her eyes showed just how important the matter was. She never looked at Dumbledore like that, not as a cat, and certainly not as a woman. It was clear she wouldn't believe a word unless it came directly from him. But Dumbledore, who had just unwrapped another lemon drop, remained silent. Professor McGonagall pressed on. "People are saying Voldemort was in Godric's Hollow last night, looking for the Potters. They're saying Lily and James, they're saying they're dead." Dumbledore lowered his head. Professor McGonagall, holding her breath, whispered, "Lily and James. I can't believe it. I don't want to believe it." Dumbledore gently reached out and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I know. I know." Her voice trembled as she continued. "But it doesn't end there. People are saying he tried to kill their little boy too, but he couldn't. No one knows why, they only know that when he failed to kill Harry Potter, he vanished. Lost all his power." Dumbledore nodded solemnly. McGonagall, now barely able to speak, stammered, "So, it's true? The one who's murdered so many, with all that experience. He couldn't kill a baby? How did Harry survive?" "We can only guess," said Dumbledore. "We may never know." Professor McGonagall pulled out a lace handkerchief and dabbed at her eyes beneath her spectacles. Dumbledore gave a great sniff as he took a golden watch from his pocket and examined it. It was a very odd watch. It had 12 hands but no numbers. Instead, little planets were moving around the edge. It must have made sense to Dumbledore, though, because he put it back in his pocket and said, "Hagrid's late. I suppose it was he who told you I'd be here, by the way?" "Yes," said Professor McGonagall. "And I don't suppose you're going to tell me why you're here, of all places?" "I've come to bring Harry to his aunt and uncle. They're the only family he has left now." You can't mean the people who live here," cried Professor McGonagall, jumping to her feet and pointing at number 4. "Dumbledore, you can't. I've been watching them all day. You couldn't find 2 people who are less like us. And they've got this son, I saw him kicking his mother all the way up the street, screaming for sweets. Harry Potter come and live here. It's the best place for him," said Dumbledore firmly. "His aunt and uncle will be able to explain everything to him when he's older. I've written them a letter." "A letter?" repeated Professor McGonagall faintly, sitting back down on the wall. "Really, Dumbledore, you think you can explain all this in a letter? These people will never understand him. He'll be famous, a legend. I wouldn't be surprised if today was known as Harry Potter Day in the future. There will be books written about Harry. every child in our world will know his name. Exactly, said Dumbledore, looking very seriously over the top of his half-moon glasses. It would be enough to turn any boy's head. Famous before he can walk and talk. Famous for something he won't even remember. Can't you see how much better off he'll be, growing up away from all that until he's ready to take it? Professor McGonagall opened her mouth, changed her mind, swallowed, and then said, yes, you're right, of course. But how is the boy getting here, Dumbledore? She eyed his cloak suddenly as though she thought he might be hiding Harry underneath it. Hagrid's bringing him. You think it wise to trust Hagrid with something as important as this? I would trust Hagrid with my life, said Dumbledore. I'm not saying his heart isn't in the right place, said Professor McGonagall. A low rumbling sound but you had can't broken pretend the silence he's not around careless. Them. It grew steadily louder as they looked up and down the street for some sign of a headlight. It swelled to a roar as they both looked up at the sky, and a huge motorcycle fell out of the air and landed on the road in front of them. If the motorcycle was huge, it was nothing to the man sitting astride it. He was almost twice as tall as a normal man and at least 5 times as wide. He looked simply too big to be allowed, and so wild, long tangles of bushy black hair and beard hid most of his face. He had hands the size of trash can lids, and his feet in their leather boots were like baby dolphins. In his vast, muscular arms he was holding a bundle of blankets. Hagrid, said Dumbledore, sounding relieved. At last. And where did you get that motorcycle? Borrowed it, Professor Dumbledore, sir, said the giant, climbing carefully off the motorcycle as he spoke. Young Sirius Black lent it to me. I've got him, sir. No problems, were there? No, sir, house was almost destroyed, but I got him out all right before the muggles started swarming around. He fell asleep as we was flyin' over Bristol. Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall bent forward over the bundle of blankets. Inside, just visible, was a baby boy, fast asleep. Under a tuft of jet black hair over his forehead they could see a curiously shaped cut, like a bolt of lightning. Is that where? Whispered Professor McGonagall. Yes, said Dumbledore. He'll have that scar forever. Couldn't you do something about it, Dumbledore? Even if I could, I wouldn't. Scars can come in handy. I have one myself above my left knee that is a perfect map of the London Underground. Well, give him here, Hagrid, we'd better get this over with. Dumbledore took Harry in his arms and turned toward the Dursleys' house. Could I say goodbye to him, sir? Asked Hagrid. He bent his great, shaggy head over Harry and gave him what must have been a very scratchy, whiskery kiss. Then, suddenly, Hagrid let out a howl like a wounded dog. Shoo, hissed Professor McGonagall, you'll wake the muggles. Sorry, sobbed Hagrid, taking out a large, spotted handkerchief and burying his face in it. But I can't stand it, Lily and James dead, and poor little Harry off to live with muggles. Yes, it's all very sad, but get a grip on yourself, Hagrid, or we'll be found, Professor McGonagall whispered, patting Hagrid gingerly on the arm as Dumbledore stepped over the low garden wall and walked to the front door. He laid Harry gently on the doorstep, took a letter out of his cloak, tucked it inside Harry's blankets, and then came back to the other two. For a full minute the three of them stood and looked at the little bundle. Hagrid's shoulders shook, Professor McGonagall blinked furiously, and the twinkling light that usually shone from Dumbledore's eyes seemed to have gone out. Well, said Dumbledore finally, that's that. We've no business staying here. We may as well go and join the celebrations. Yeah, said Hagrid in a very muffled voice, I'd best get this bike away. Good night, Professor McGonagall, Professor Dumbledore, sir. Wiping his streaming eyes on his jacket sleeve, Hagrid swung himself onto the motorcycle and kicked the engine into life. With a roar it rose into the air and off into the night. I shall see you soon, I expect, Professor McGonagall, said Dumbledore, nodding to her. Professor McGonagall blew her nose in reply. Dumbledore turned and walked back down the street. On the corner he stopped and took out the silver put-outer. He clicked it once, and 12 balls of light sped back to there. Thank you for joining me on this magical journey. If this story touched your heart, stay with us, because the adventure is only just beginning. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and never stop believing in magic.